Now, remember, a few weeks ago, we got through to the second round of the French presidential elections, and mainstream media were throwing their hands up in horror. The far-right Marine Le Pen could become the next French president. Of course, it didn't happen, although it's noticeable that with each French presidential election, her votes get bigger. But what very few in this country noticed is that she only just made the second round. There is the leader, and he's a hard left political leader, arguably way to the left of Jeremy Corbyn, Jean-Luc Mélenchon, and she just pipped him to get into the second round. Now, we now face the Assemblée Nationale elections. I've literally seen almost zero coverage in the United Kingdom about this. The first round is coming up on Sunday, and it's about time we had a look at the numbers to see what's going to happen. And I'm very pleased to say that joining me from Paris is David Chazan, freelance journalist, writes for The Telegraph amongst many other publications. David, please educate, enlighten the British public as to what's happening over the course of the next two Sundays.
Well, Nigel, I think what's happened in terms of UK coverage of this election is that until just a few days ago, it had been assumed that President Macron's centrist party was set to win a parliamentary majority, which it already holds. Not much of a story there. But in the past few days, that's looked in doubt, because Jean-Luc Mélenchon's Green and Leftist alliance, it's a number of parties, including socialists, communists and environmentalists, look as though they're very, very close to President Macron's group. Now, according to the opinion polls, they're unlikely to win the parliamentary majority that Jean-Luc Mélenchon says would force President Macron to name him Prime Minister, but they could easily rob Mr. Macron's party of the majority it needs to govern effectively.
And that would mean that you would have a situation where a newly elected French president could not get any legislation through?
Well, it would certainly be very difficult for him to get legislation through. However, if you look at where the other groups are in Parliament, let's assume that President Macron's party comes first, the Leftist Alliance second, third would probably be the centre-right Republicans, more or less like the Conservatives in the UK. That would make them the kingmakers. They would be likely to have some kind of alliance, even though it might be a little bit uncomfortable, with President Macron's party.
Yeah.
So that would mean that Macron could probably press ahead with his business-friendly economic reforms, but let's say his margin of manoeuvre would be somewhat more restricted than it has been during his first term.
Now, Mélenchon surprised everybody in that first round of the French presidential election, and from what you say, he's on a bit of a roll again. If he was to continue that role, if he was to become the French Prime Minister, what kind of policies would he be pushing? I hear that he supports top-rate tax at 90%.
Absolutely. I mean, you were very right to compare him to Jeremy Corbyn. He's quite close to Mr. Corbyn. Corbyn actually visited Paris last weekend at the behest of Mélenchon's alliance, and that may have backfired against Mr. Mélenchon, because there were a lot of objections from the centre-left and the Socialist Party, who are part of his alliance, because they object to Corbyn over the way Labour handled the anti-Semitism allegations under his leadership. Now, conservative commentators say that Mélenchon is a classic tax and spend leftist, and his economic policies are simplistic, they say, and they would ruin France. And they accuse him of making pie-in-the-sky promises, many of them, and you can agree or disagree with this, compare those kinds of promises with the sorts of pledges that some British politicians made over Brexit.
Thank you very much indeed, David. We're going to watch with great interest what happens in Paris on Sunday. And I would argue to you, the audience at home, Mélenchon's got more chance of becoming Prime Minister than Marine Le Pen had of becoming President. Just a quick thought from me.